welcome to the Let's Get Vulnerable podcast. We have a very special guest with us today, Samantha Brooks. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to have you, and I want to tell the audience just a little bit about you. So I have Sam's bio. Sam is a graduate of the Empowered.Secure.Loved program and continued on in the ESL membership program, spending approximately 1 year doing the work. Sam came to the program after years of unsuccessful relationships, one of which ended in domestic violence. Sam was drawn to work with Dr. Morgan after hearing her describe and heal from a similar relationship. In her personal life, Sam loves animals, working out, yoga, meditation, plant-based cooking, and personal development. And I can say from knowing Sam for this time that she is such a genuine, caring person. You have been such a gift to our community, being vulnerable, sharing all along the way. I'm really fortunate to know you and just really happy that we get to share your story today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. We have so much we can talk about. I think a good place to start is where you were at in your life before you came to the program, a little bit about your background, and what was it that really led you to say, okay, I need to work on myself?
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask something like this, and I was kind of thinking through, and I felt like, let me describe it like the Eras tour, right? So I'm going to take you on like my Eras journey.
Yes.
Yeah. So I would say in my 20s era, I was, I heard this on a movie recently and I wrote it down. I was naive, ill-prepared, and I forgot the other word, but yeah, unrealistic. I was naive, unrealistic, and ill-prepared. That was my 20s era. I think at that time I thought relationships really were based on passion. I'd be like, where's the passion? And it was kind of chaotic, honestly. Lots of ups and downs. My 30s era, sadly, was just healing from trauma. It's not really the topic of this podcast. It was I was downtown on 9/11, so I had a lot to heal from in my 30s.
Yes.
And yeah, I know it's like add trauma to just trauma. My 40s era actually was a lot of fun. I dated. I was on the apps. I was doing speed dating. I was going to meetups. I had some great relationships. And some not so great relationships. I mean, you mentioned in the bio the domestic abuse, and that was the 40s era also. We can talk about that. And my 50s era, which I'm happy to say I'm in and feeling amazing, is my healing era, really. And I would love to touch on my 50s era. I took a long break, and I want to talk about that because I feel like when I heard people talk about taking a break and working on oneself, when I was in my 20s or any era, I thought, no, I'm not taking a break. And I didn't understand the value of it. So there's such a wide range of experience. And I was actually thinking before we were talking, it's like we can discuss really any topic. And I've probably experienced it.
Oh, Sam, I love you being vulnerable and sharing this with us. And I think it's such a powerful example because so many women, especially, get in their head this thing about timelines.
Yes.
Like, oh, I should be at XYZ place. And if I'm not there, then it's never going to happen for me. And we just beat ourselves up constantly. But I love that you've shared this. Let's go to the 40s era because I know that was a challenging time.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'm really curious about too is what do you feel like your beliefs about yourself were and those really challenging experiences that you had that brought you to that place?
Yeah. I love that we touched on this because I feel like so much of my healing has been through the belief work. And I feel like it's such a blessing, like this term that maybe people haven't heard, the neuroplasticity, right? So I think the fact that we can rewire ourselves, because the common denominator in all of my eras was me. So it was my decisions. the relationships that I was picking. And that all comes from my beliefs, my history. And so I would say I was probably a little lost, if I'm being very honest. I didn't really know who I was, what I stood for, what was important to me.
Mhm.
I think in terms of relationships, I just thought two people had passion and they came together and somehow it just worked. I didn't really, I didn't have any kind of guidelines, like what were my boundaries,
Mm.
or what was realistic to expect. And I really didn't know how to work through conflict. So I would get into a relationship, and maybe what are those, like the first 3 months when it's like your honeymoon phase, and then maybe that 3 months to 6 months period was really challenging for me, and a time when a lot of my relationships fell apart because I didn't know how to navigate it.
Is it fair to say that you growing up didn't have good models either? You didn't see a lot of healthy relationships?
Yeah, I grew up, I would say the 80s, right? And so it's I look back on that era again, the 80s, when it was like there was just, in terms of the community, there was a lot of drugs, and not necessarily like young people, the parents, and drugs and pornography and sex and all of it. It's even in the music. When I listen to like certain stations that play that 80s music, and like I listen to the words, and I'm like, wow, like this is really what I was listening to when I was like 16, or
Mhm.
um and I think that's what I mean about like not having boundaries, like just thinking that like all of this was like okay, and
Yeah.
it's really not. And I had all sorts of role models. I had my parents are still married, 50 plus years, but there was also a lot of divorce around. And I will say, one of the messages I was brought up with was always be able to take care of yourself, right? Because a lot of these women were getting divorced and they didn't have a career, and maybe they were left without much funds or support. And so, like, I think that's been a little challenging for me. That's been a belief I have to really look at. Like, always be able to take care of yourself. It's a great message, but then does it really leave space for me to let someone in, right? If I'm always if I'm the rock and I'm alone and I'm taking care of myself, um, have I built a wall that's so big? So yeah, those were some of the beliefs.
Mhm. Yeah, it's really interesting, that belief, because we could take that in and it could be really helpful. Of, wow, I have to be able to take care of myself. And then you could say, and I also want to be able to rely on others. Or a lot of us here, I have to be able to take care of myself and put up your walls, protect yourself from others, don't rely on anyone, right? Like that's
Right.
kind of the subtext, how so many of us interpret that belief.
I would say that's been one of my biggest struggles between uh, I mean, and here I am being vulnerable, but it's been challenging for me to be really vulnerable in my relationships. I think there was a fear, like if someone really knew me, they wouldn't love me. And I think that's a common one. And,
Yeah.
you know,
And here you are on the show. I love it.
I know. I got to tell you, like, I actually have sitting next to me what I wrote in our group, the ESL group, before I, graduated,
Yeah.
about like where I am now. And the reason I have it sitting next to me is because in these moments when I get nervous, I forget who I am. I forget how far I've come. And I wanted to share that because, like, I think that's important for women to, do your journaling so that when you're in a moment of anxiety, or you forget, you can look at it and be like, yes, this is where I am now. And it's, we talk, you talk a lot about self-regulation in the program.
Yeah.
And so yes, I think, just to go back to what you said, look at me now. Here I am on a podcast. I in another group I'm in, I was asked to be like one of the spotlight members, so I had to write up a little bio about myself and give a picture.
Good.
And so, like, it's like in bubbling up in all the areas where it's like, now I have an opportunity to to kind of shine my light. And for many years, I'm going to be honest, I wanted to be invisible. I didn't want to draw attention to myself, and I didn't want to be this. So, and here I am, and I'm doing it, and so it's good. It's a real sign of healing.
I love it. I want to just cheer you on in that. And I know seeing you at all stages in the program, I can see and feel the change in your energy of that. Okay, I want to allow myself to be seen for who I am. I'm loving myself. You know, there's this glow that happens that's in your energy as you step into self-acceptance, and you absolutely have that. So it's just so awesome to watch. I do want to talk about where you are today, but before we do that, I just want the audience to know a little bit more about where you came from. You and I were talking about before the interview, we were talking about how we've both experienced domestic violence and being survivors of domestic violence. It's October, Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and I think it's powerful to just share a little bit about that experience, Sam, if you're willing to go there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Kind of tell us like how you got there and your experience getting out and maybe the impact it had on you.
Absolutely. You know, one of my intentions on this podcast was to be of service to others, right? And so I think it's really important for us, all of us, to share our experience because, to help each other. So I will say that I met this man in my 20s. So he was in my 20s era and my 40s era. The 40s era was when the I'll get there. So the 20s era, I met him. It was exactly like I mentioned. It was like instant attraction. It was passion. We had a shared hobby. We spent a lot of time doing our hobby together. It was very chaotic. You talk about, and I really want to make sure we touch on this. I've heard you say when you're in a chaotic relationship where there's the highs and the lows, it can trigger those areas in the brain that are similar to like an addiction. I think you talked specifically like gambling addiction, right? So it's like
intermittent reinforcement.
Yes.
Yeah, the highs and lows.
Yes.
Sometimes hit the jackpot.
Yes.
Sometimes it's
Yes.
terrible, and your brain starts to crave those highs, and it looks like gambling addiction is what we see. Yeah.
The highs were really high. I'll tell you, when the highs were there, it was amazing. Doing our art together, which was the hobby I was mentioning, and like I said, the passion, but then the lows were really low. I don't want to get too much into his story, but he was, drinking and doing other things, and I'm going to be on. I will out myself here. I was actually going to Al-Anon, which is a 12-step program for friends and family of alcoholics, it is an anonymous program, but I'm okay with breaking my anonymity. And so, like, even with the tools in that program, I still was way deep. I was way deep, and I think the challenge for people who are in our support group or our support network, right, is that you kind of have to watch someone until they're ready to help themselves. You can tell them, "Hey, I'm here for you," but you can't. There's not much else that can happen. So, like, here I was doing these crazy things that didn't feel crazy at the time. It just felt like this was a great not a great relationship. I don't think I ever thought that. Oops. I don't think I ever thought it was a great relationship, but I definitely stayed in it, and I stayed in it for 3 years actually, and then it ended kind of abruptly and no contact.
Yeah.
And okay, so here's the crazy part of the story. So here I am in my 40s. I'm feeling better. I find him on Facebook. I hate to admit it. I found him and I connected. And there was a moment before I hit that friend request button where I thought, like, do I really want to do this? Is this really healthy for me? And I was like, oh yeah, let's just Yeah, and I did. And we connected after 10 years of not speaking. And I don't want, oh, gosh, it's so hard to tell the story because I don't want to go into all the ins and outs, but I will just say we met, we picked up kind of right where we left off. It was very chaotic. Once again, all the highs, all the lows. And to kind of wrap this up, and I'm happy to answer more questions, but to wrap it up, this was another like 3-year period. I found out he was living a double life and he was lying to me. And when I confronted him with the lie, he slapped me and left, which was a blessing, actually, that he left. Yeah. And
just going to say, I really appreciate you sharing this and being this vulnerable.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't want to get too much into the details, but it's important to share some of the details. And I will just say the one thing about after I'm using the word specifically slap because there was definitely a shock. Like, what is this domestic violence? What do I do now? And I was, luckily, again, I had the support network. I still was in my groups and everything. So I had a friend I knew I could call kind of late. It was kind of late at night. And he said, Sam, you have to call the police. And I was like, I don't want to call the police. Sam, you have to call the police. I don't want to call the police. This back and forth. And then finally I did call the police and they came and I gave my statement and they gave me some information on domestic violence. They asked me if I wanted to press charges and I said no. And I was going to say the good news about calling the police is, so when he got home, I guess he had a moment to cool down. Then the phone call started. The good news is because the police were there, I was able to just hand the phone to the police officer who said, leave her alone. Do not call her again.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I got an email saying, I'm sorry. So I guess the point is that it helped to de-escalate the situation. That situation could have escalated actually from there. And thank God it de-escalated. Yeah, I wish I could say the story ended there. I did actually I did see him one more time in public, in a public space, and it was because he really just would not take no for an answer. And, I think, and then I wound up moving very far away. So now we're not anywhere nearby. And I will just say one other thing, and then I will definitely want to. He did reach out. So then the pandemic happens, right? 2020, and of course I heard from him, and it's kind of started all over again. And at one point I was like, I said to him, like, do you love me? And his response was, whoa, let's not go so fast. And I'm like, so fast? I met this guy in the 1990s, right? Now it's 2020. Like, if we're going any slower, we would be going backwards. And that was when I knew, like, whoa, stop the insanity. Cannot go there.
Cannot re-engage. Yeah.
No.
This is such a powerful share. I don't even think you realize how powerful it is, because there's somebody listening who's been in a similar situation where they knew that someone wasn't good for them, right? Logically, but then they still found themselves engaging and they found themselves being pulled into it.
Yes.
So the piece here that is so important that I talk about over and over, and I know you know about, is that term repetition compulsion. Repeating the pattern as a compulsion. It's not a conscious choice. It's an unconscious, emotional, biological pull to repeating a pattern. And through that, hopefully we develop compassion for ourselves. I'm curious, as you did the program and you learned about repetition compulsion, did that help you with compassion here?
100%. 100%. I have a lot of self-compassion. I've done a lot of self-forgiveness. There's a whole like little ritual I did that I probably never even shared with you because it's not part of our program or the program that you teach, but I sat down with the names of all my significant relationships, and I've had a bunch. And I went through an entire ritual where I brought the relationship to mind. I acknowledged not just the pain I felt, but the pain I gave, or whatever the word is you'd use for that. So like it had to do with like releasing both them as well as myself. So like I am free and you are free. And I kind of did that for each relationship. And so yeah, there's a lot of self-compassion. There's a lot of self-forgiveness. I definitely have awareness of how much before the program or healing. I have a lot of awareness about where I self-abandoned. Right, that's a big part of my story, self-abandonment. And so there has to be self-compassion there as well, and self-forgiveness. I didn't do it on purpose or even understanding those little. Some of them are little, some of them are big. And little could be like, oh, I don't really want to eat this kind of food, but I will. Maybe that's a smaller self-abandonment than a larger boundary. Maybe I don't want to have sex, but I say yes because I don't know how to say no. That's maybe a bigger self-abandonment. So like there's all these different levels of self-abandonment. And yeah, not to get off of the repetition compulsion, it really can be hard. And it was certainly hard for me when I was in that relationship to draw the boundary. Not only did I have repetition compulsion, but I also think maybe he did because there was a lot of manipulation to get me back and engaged again.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. And I think, oh gosh, I mean, there's just so many pieces here. One thing I want to point out is that when we are attracted to someone who clearly has some narcissistic traits, some really difficult things going on in their life, substance abuse. This was the same with the narcissist that I dated for a year and a half. Very much an alcoholic, other substances as well. When we are attracted to that, a lot of times it's because we're attracted to emotionally unavailable people, and it's showing up in the mental health concerns and it's showing up in the substance abuse. Because just as you asked him after years of knowing this person, do you love me? And he says no. I mean, my God, like, we just realized, wow, this person's incapable. The emotional availability is not there.
Yes.
And there's a caretaking element in that. I'm curious, obviously in the program, you go through beliefs about relationships, right? We
Yes.
drill down into that. Do you know what some of your old beliefs about relationships were?
Yeah. So I think this also goes back to self-abandonment, right? So I feel like, and we've talked maybe in our group calls about, I'm trying to think how to phrase this. We were talking recently about people pleasing. And so it's about, in order to get my needs met, I have to kind of be focused on you. And
Devaluing yourself,
yeah,
others,
yeah.
prioritizing others' needs. Yeah.
Yes. And I wanted to say that, like, for anyone who's thinking this, because I've done so much healing here too, like my parents were like in their early 20s when they had me. I look back at my early 20s, my God,
Yeah.
I would have been a mess. And so like, I just want to be careful as I speak that like whatever beliefs that may have been picked up from my family of origin, like I've had a lot of healing there. It's not about blaming my family or it's knowing that like everyone did the best they could, and a 21-year-old who has a baby maybe it isn't really is still maybe not that present for the child, right, in whatever way. And so yeah, I would say growing up I wasn't really didn't have mirrored back to me how important my own feelings were, or that they were valid, or that they deserve to
Yeah.
be heard. Did definitely never learn soothing.
Thank you for pointing this out, Sam, because I think there's a lot of people who can kind of go through work and you see people online sort of like bashing their parents. It almost feels like it's in to do that, to cancel them. And I just want to acknowledge the healing that is evident in you when you can say, hey, I love them. I know they were doing the best that they could.
Yeah.
And there's ways that they failed me. As we say, all of that is true. They were doing the best they could. There's some ways that they failed me. And then you're saying, I understand. They were in their early 20s, right? And I think when we get to that place and we're not blaming others, that's when some of the real healing happens. We have to acknowledge how it impacted us, but also not just place the blame on others.
Yeah. Yeah. And so here's where I get to do the rewiring, right? Like my needs are valid. My needs are important. I can state my needs and either they will or they won't be met, but I'm okay either way.
Yeah.
Right. But when you're young, right, we're relying on a certain group of people, one parent, two parents, grandparents, whoever is raising you, we're relying on that's really our safety, right? So like now as an adult, I get to say like, no, it's absolutely okay for me to state my needs. And if this person can't meet them, either I get to look at my boundary or I get to have it met somewhere else. And again, like when we talked about like how do I recognize a healthy relationship? I was never taught. I was never taught like, oh, maybe passion isn't as important as someone who's caring or who can speak when there's conflict, who can speak in a mature way and work out conflict in a mature way, right? So it's like all these different things that you might want to look at, or that I look at now as a more mature person, like right. So it was like I was going to my romantic relationships looking for things to be met that maybe weren't realistic, and maybe there were things I could have taken care of on my own, or maybe there were ways I could have communicated when I was upset that were healthier than not. And so like all these little things. And I think like even like one of the things I was thinking like in preparation for the podcast, it's like this isn't like your relationship isn't like the prize that you get at the end. You didn't here you graduated, here's your relationship, right? It's like even when we're in relationships, there's working through conflict in a healthy way. There's navigating maybe breaches in trust, whatever it is. It's never like we get to this point where we're graduated and here you go and all is well. And I do believe relationships can bring us happiness, and I also believe that there's a lot of growth opportunity in them.
Time and time again, I have women who go through the program, and yes, a lot of them do end up getting engaged and they find their person, etc. And I know that that's so available to you, and that's beautiful, right? But time and time again, people go through it and they come to me and they say, I am so grateful for who I've become. And that is
Yes.
even more valuable to me. They'll say, I don't even care if I find someone, which is great because you're
Yes.
in a wonderful relationship with yourself, which is most important. So I know we talked a lot about your past. I do want to just switch gears and let you talk about where you are currently and share with our audience and give people hope. I can tell it's like almost painful for you to remember that past version of yourself. You're like,
yeah,
I want to be where I'm at now, which is
yeah,
a different place.
yeah.
So thanks for going there. And now take us to where you are currently and tell us about the changes you've had.
Yes. So I just would love to just briefly read what I had written in the
in our group.
yes, because I feel like okay, yeah, I wrote yes. See, this is why I like, oh yeah, that's true. I am more comfortable showing up authentically. Yes, speaking my truth, honoring my worth. I feel like my friendships have gotten deeper and more authentic as a result. I am confident in myself, my discernment, and my intuition. I am able to make decisions without getting a million opinions. I'm in the, oh, yes. I said, no more staying small and hiding myself. I started dating, but honestly, the personal growth feels more exciting to me right now. I feel really secure in the attachments I do have and trust they will unfold over time or something better. And that's actually one thing I wanted to share too. Like when you said, so grateful, I forgot even what you said already. My gosh, we talked about so much, but I was going to say, like, there were men in my past who I thought I wanted to be with so badly. And now I say, thank goodness it didn't work out.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And I really wanted to make sure to share that because like if there's any woman who's like suffering, listening to this and feeling like, oh my God, this person, I know he's the one, I have to be with him. Um, your feelings may change as you heal or as you grow. I definitely in my history, I think I felt like, this is the person, and it's like they weren't, and it's okay. I'm at the place now where I can say like, wow, thank goodness that didn't work out. And where I am now, so like taking this break has been amazing. And I was always so against taking a break. What does taking a break mean? It means saying like, I don't need to date right now and I'm going to focus on my healing. And it's about reestablishing a relationship with myself, loving myself unconditionally. That has also been a journey. Um, I was in a different women's group, and I just will share very briefly, like, there was maybe a body part that I wasn't accepting. And like, then it's like, it's all about, so fall in love with that body part, write an ode to it. Like, just, it's not about like changing our appearance. It's loving who we are exactly as we are. And having this time alone has given me the space to do that. Right. And, to take a look at my beliefs, to start to change them and rewire them and really and rediscover who I am. What do I enjoy doing? If I were going to go on a date, what would I want? What would bring me joy?
Yeah. I love this, Sam. I've been talking about soft girl fall, which is where we get off the hamster wheel. We're focused on ourselves. We're
Yeah.
focused on our healing. And I also wanted to talk about what you said in terms of taking a break, because there's a distinction there, because we can like logically, physically take a break as in we're not going on any dates. And a lot of people do that. But you also have to make sure you're emotionally and energetically taking that break. Because I know people who maybe they're not going on dates, but they're still maybe obsessing over somebody. They're noticing that person at the gym and they're trying to like connect with them. So I think it's really important when we say take a break, we mean like 100% take your energy for yourself and you're not dating at all. Do you relate to that at all? Of like, you could say you're taking a break, but then not energetically do it?
100%. Absolutely. And I will say, I think again that comes from it coming from myself. Like not someone saying you should take a break and then I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm going to do this because I think I should be doing this," right? I think when someone gets there in their own heart, then they can truly take that break. But if they're thinking like, "Oh," and maybe they're doing it because they saw a friend do it and then their friend got into a relationship after, which is common actually, but you shouldn't go into it with this expectation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with you. I think I wasn't on any apps. I was not looking. I was
In a
and it was
relationship with
uh
Sam.
yes. And like I said, it was also very organic. No one told me I should do it. It's certainly not part of the ESL program for anyone who's thinking
Nope.
of joining and we'd be scared like they're going to tell me to do that. No, it was just a time in my life when I said, you know what? I am tired of redoing this, like the same relationship with a different guy, right? Because that's kind of what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, some are healthier than others. But they all kind of had a similar pattern. And so it's about, yeah, I'm going to take a break and just kind of get to like, what are these beliefs? Who's running the show here? Is this really me running the show or is there something underneath that? Oh, and I'll remember, this is something important. When I did my like intake call with your team, I said, I feel like I have a blind spot. I feel like I have a blind spot, and now I can see what that blind spot was, and it was some of these underlying beliefs that
Mm.
were running the show. It was like a program that I didn't even realize was running, like almost like a computer program, or like the program in the brain. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, that's so powerful. That's exactly where I was in my life before doing this work. And how beautiful is it when you get to wipe the slate clean? We talk about, it's like, okay, this isn't serving me. And then intentionally rebuild,
Yes.
intentionally rebuild. And I see that in you, Sam, you've wiped the slate clean.
Yeah. It's been amazing. I'll be honest. It's been so nice. I have to be careful, right? Because it's been now I think the challenge for me is to like let someone in, be vulnerable
Yeah.
with a man, and have the discernment, right? So, and this question has come up for me, and I don't know if the viewers or listeners would relate. Like I said, and I've asked this in the public Facebook group, like, how do I trust myself after picking so many unhealthy men? How do I trust myself again? And I think I'm at that place. Like, yes, I have been dating, but no serious relationship. And to learn to trust myself again, to know that, like, if I should start to see some of the patterns that I hadn't seen in the past,
Yeah.
to know that I can take care of myself and recognize it. And I think that's going to be the challenge for me, honestly, as I go forth.
Yeah. And I think, we talk about this, but this whole piece about, okay, I have securely attached Sam available to me. I've done the work to have that identity be available. And then the question is, am I making sure that I'm aligning with that version of myself as I'm making decisions? And we talk about this all the time. It's different ways of being, different inputs, and you get different outputs. And I know you've experienced this where it's like, oh, wow, I can actually enjoy dating.
Yes.
And that enjoyment of it is because you are showing up as securely attached and you've created safety. It's no longer a fear-based activity.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
I saw you post about that a few times. You're like, I'm enjoying dating.
Yes. It's so true. And also to not have any attachment. So, like, it was hilarious. There was one guy and he kind of just disappeared, and I sent him a text. I said, "Are you ghosting me?" He says, "No, I would never ghost you." And then he ghosted me. But you know what? Now I have a sense of humor about it, and I could be like, "This is hilarious," and then just move on.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, it's like you're no longer basing your self-worth in the dating outcomes.
Yes.
Have a really good sense of self. You're not self-abandoning. You've got the love scientist approach of, okay, I'm gathering data. If this is how someone shows up early on, clearly I don't want to be with them long term. Then
Yes.
it just makes dating so much more fun, so much more enjoyable. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's not this, because, we talk about repetition compulsion. And I think back to myself too in my 20s. It was like I always felt like I had to make a relationship happen. It was always on my mind. It was a compulsion. I was always
Yes.
thinking about people. Um, I could never just be. And I would find myself in these relationships that were nowhere near the standard of relationship that I wanted to have. And it was simply out of, well, if I don't have someone, that means there's something wrong with me or I'm not worthy. I had so much of my own beliefs about myself, like tied up into my relationship status.
100%. My friends and I talk about it now. I still have a support group around me. And I was just recently talking to a friend about not being the one to always initiate the texting.
Yeah.
And that, again, like exactly what you just said, it's like my self-worth cannot be wrapped up in if a man is pursuing me or if he's engaged in our relationship, I meant. And because it's like if we peg our self-worth on that, like we cannot put our self-worth outside of ourselves. It has to come from inside.
Yeah.
And yeah, I so relate to that. Being the one who felt like I had to make the relationship work, I had to try so hard, I had to figure it out, whatever it was. And that's definitely not, yeah. Yeah.
Well, I want to celebrate this place that you're in and just, myself having the privilege to watch you go through this transformation. It's been incredible to watch, and I know you feel a lot different. I want to ask you if you would speak to someone who's listening, who's maybe thinking about the program or thinking about finally working on themselves, but maybe they're a little scared. They don't know what to expect. What would you say to that person who's kind of on the fence?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I say to all my friends is you are so worth it. You are worth putting in the time. You are worth putting in the investment. And I, what I loved about the ESL program, and I already said this in my bio, I was attracted when I heard your story and I knew that you had went through something similar to me, and you're also, professional, you're doctorate in clinical psychology, correct me if I'm wrong. And so like you have both the professional as well as the personal. So it's not like someone's up in some like tower lecturing to me about something I should do. Like your heart is there because you've been through it. And I feel like everyone, all of the coaches in the program, whether it's on a group call or my one-on-one calls, because I got to speak to Dr. Morgan as well as this other support staff who are all fully qualified, all been through the program, and also I think that's another distinction. Like there is a lot of relationship coaches out there, right? But you guys all are
Professionals.
therapists, really, right?
Yeah.
And so it was like the best of both worlds, right? And so I would say, and I would also say, have patience with yourself. I think some of these beliefs are so old and historical, and it took time for them to be embedded. And just be patient with yourself as you do this work. It doesn't change overnight, but if you stick with it, I mean, the other thing we talked about in the intro is I stayed on in the membership program.
Yes.
After the 8-week program, I gave myself the gift, and it really is a gift, right, of the monthly membership, because again, it's not like 8 weeks and boom, boom, you're graduating, and it's really a lifelong learning. And so I would say, for anyone thinking of jumping in, you guys in the ESL program are amazing. You've been through some of these ups and downs that we're all sharing about, and you're also licensed and able to kind of give support and guidance, and it's all there, right? It's both do your own self-paced work as well as hop in on the calls, hop in on one-on-ones, hop in on the group forum.
Yes.
So there's a lot of support there, and a lot of love, and you'll find a lot of people going, oh, this was the other thing, right? So as we're posting beliefs that we can all kind of support each other, cheer each other on, I was shocked and amazed that so many of our beliefs are exactly the same. They might be phrased a little bit differently, but they all kind of come down to the same stuff.
Yeah.
And
At
so
the
like
root.
yes,
At the root.
yes. So like as you're going through the program and connecting with other people, you can see that like, wow, I really am not alone, that we all kind of have these same root
Yeah.
beliefs. And I'm certainly grateful I gave myself the gift of going through the program and staying in the membership. And as I kind of like venture out now, and it's always there for me if I want to come back.
It
and
is.
and
Yeah.
yeah, like we were talking about, I can come to the in person when it happens in 24. But like, yeah, the community now is there always for me. And
It is, Sam.
yeah.
And I do want to just shout you out. You're an example of it, an ideal client for us where you were always prepared. You came to every session vulnerable, ready to really dig in. You worked really hard. You gave back to the community. I think when I think about the membership, it's like you have so many breakthroughs in the 8 weeks, and you tap into this new version of yourself. You become this new version. And the membership allows you to integrate and to really maintain it. You have that support of maintaining that identity. I kind of think about like a weight loss journey. Like, okay, you lose the 50 pounds in the 8 weeks or whatever, but then you want to maintain it. So the membership just allows you to have that support. And you have been a wonderful example of somebody who really went for it, really showed up, and it shows in your results. So just like anything in life, you really get out of it what you put in. And I'm really grateful that you went through it and showed up for yourself the way you did.
Thank you. I will say, I mentioned earlier been in a 12-step program. A lot of 12-step is about service. How do we get out of our own problems? We be of service. We show up for other people. And so I'll be honest with you, replying to people's posts and questions has been really valuable for my healing as well, to be able to show up and be of service. And that's what this podcast is all about, right? I showed up vulnerable to hopefully be of service to somebody. I hope that there is somebody listening who feels some hope, who knows that they're not alone, and who knows that there is help available if it's needed.
That's exactly where this podcast was born from, is service. So I love that you said that. And I think from both of us, we want anybody listening to know that your past relationships do not determine your present or future relationships. It's never too late. You can always heal. You can always experience corrective emotional experiences, new ways of being, secure attachments available to you. Always, always. And Sam, you are such a beautiful example of that.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't normally share my age, but I felt like it's important. You are never too old, and it is never too late.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, it only gets better with age because now I have experience and wisdom.
I love it.
Yeah.
You're thriving. I want to make sure people can connect with you. Can you share with us your Instagram handle?
Yes. So I'm on Instagram as Samantha Cooks Vegan. It is pretty much a plant-based page, but if you wanted to shoot me a DM, if you have any questions or need support, or just want to share if anything I shared touched on you, I'd be happy to connect with anyone there.
I love that. And I know we could talk forever. I do want to, I always ask people this, so I'm going to ask you my final question for you. If you're walking down the street and someone comes up to you and they're asking you your best life advice of the moment, what would you share with that person?
I'm going to just share what comes right to mind. Everything's going to be okay. It's that simple. It really is. I'll be honest, that kind of came to me in a very spiritual moment. And I remember thinking, like, what? How is that possible? But this, but that. And with time, I get it. Everything is going to be okay.
That's so powerful. Somebody needed to hear that today. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that speaks to just our human tendency. We want to worry and control and overthink everything. But when we can remember that, it's really helpful in our ability to surrender and trust our path, right?
Oh my God, surrender. We didn't even talk about that word, but this has been just a journey of surrendering. Yes.
You've surrendered so much.
Yes. 100%. That has been the word. If I had to sum it up with a word, I would actually say surrender is it.
That's beautiful. Well, Sam, thank you so much for being vulnerable, for sharing with our community. I really appreciate it.
This has been a real honor and a pleasure. And I am just so thrilled to be able to participate in this, even as scary as it was. I hope I didn't come off as scared. It was scary.
You were wonderful. It was perfect. And I know the community really appreciates it. And I know both of us are wishing everyone high self-worth and great relationships. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.